Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Venue Diagram. I'm Clay, and this week's episode is going to be very different as we begin a series where we start talking about one of my all-time favorite artists, Bob Dylan. Now, you may be asking yourself, how does that relate to Venue Diagram as the channel has presented itself so far? And in some ways, it's going to be a little bit out of the genre that we've been exploring, which is venues and how they relate to sensory issues and gluten-free experience. However, we are going to explore in this episode Cafe Wha here in New York City, which is the same club where Bob Dylan made his debut here in New York City. However, I'm also going to take this chance to make a few episodes about some of the other things that I like about Bob Dylan as an artist and probably expand the scope of the channel a little bit. So, in this episode, we're going to be talking about Cafe Wha, but we're also going to be doing a tier listing of Bob Dylan's albums from the 1960s. The show that I saw at Cafe Wha was with Dustin Lohman and Evangeline Young. And Dustin Lohman has been doing a series of videos about Bob Dylan's albums tier rankings here on YouTube. And I'm going to link to Dustin's videos in the description below. And I've really enjoyed those videos, but I was thinking as I was watching them, I could do that. And I kind of wanted to do it because Dustin is doing it from the perspective of a professional musician. And I am by no means that. I am just a fan. And a fan who has a lot of opinions, certainly, but I wanted to kind of give that perspective, right? That perspective of someone who loves the music and loves the perspective and brings kind of that sense of what it was like as a complete novice. So, without any further ado, let's jump into the review of Cafe Wha and the tier list. So heading down to Cafe Wha is a fun experience as you get to go down into the village. And here you can see I've just gotten out of the subway and I'm heading over to 4th Street. So it's positively 4th Street right from the beginning, which is an exciting time. Coming around, heading over to Cafe Wha, it was established in 1959 and has been one of the classic clubs. It's one of the few classic clubs that still exist here in the city. Now, this part of the village over here, the West Village, the Subterranean Club used to be over here on my right, and I'm going to circle around and go back over towards McDougal Street, where Cafe Wha is in just a second here, but it's just a great historic part of the city here. And now I am going to be walking up Minetta Lane, and we can see the Cafe Wha over here on the left. So the club, as I said, opened in 59 and has just had a whole lot of fantastic artists. Dylan, Hendrix, Springsteen have all started their careers here. It's also been a comedy club. Woody Allen, Lenny Bruce, all kinds of great performers have all started here. And tonight we're seeing this show, Bob Dylan's Greatest and Strangest. And these advertisements all show kind of the fun times that are in store when you head into the show. Now, from a sensory perspective, it's dark in here, which is a fun thing. Everything is down in the basement. Everything is painted black, so there's no light really to speak of. And at least for this show, there's not a whole lot of sound issues. So I asked, and they said that I could record stuff, and so I'm just recording everything that's going on in here. It's a really great place. It's a really fun and intimate environment. I think that it's about 100 seats. It's a great stage set up here. And this show is all acoustic, which is nice for me because that gives me a better chance to listen in and just feel connected to the music. And just talking about the show a little bit, this is Dustin Lohman and Evangeline Young, and I'll let them introduce themselves here because I think they can do a better job than I can.
Thank you all for being here. Our objective tonight is to play some songs that you know you love and to introduce you to some songs that you don't know you love just yet. They will be many of his greatest compositions, many of his oddest compositions. This is a new series that we run. It's I'm Dustin Lohman, this is Evangeline Young, and Beatrice Gorsuch. We just started this year. The objective is to explore the greatest and the oddest of his back catalog.
Now, the music itself was really great. I loved all three of these performers were really great, and I encourage everyone to check them out on Instagram. They gave out their Instagram information, and I will link that in the bio here. Please come back to Cafe Wha and see some more of Dustin's shows. He does a great job. And Dustin is also the person who was doing the Dylan tier list, which gave me the idea to do the tier list of Dylan albums. So just all these guys are great, and they're doing these Dylan songs, so clearly I can't play any of the music, but it's really a great time here, and I encourage everyone to come back and see the shows. From a sensory perspective, I will say it was great. I got new loops for Christmas. My partner gave me new loops that have 3 settings on them, and I was able to use the second setting, which was 4 performances, and that was perfect for this. I was sitting in a bench, which was very close to the action here, and I was not overwhelmed at all. Everything was really perfect. And I mean, it was nice that this wasn't like, super loud rock music or anything, but in any case, I loved being at this concert, which, I mean, it was still in music, which I love to start with. These performers were great. The mandolin and violin here were amazing. Well, fiddle, really, more so than violin. But in any case, and that's Antonio Romero on the fiddle and Steve Burke on the mandolin, along with, that's currently Beatrice Gorsuch singing John Brown right now. And please check them all out. Evangeline is over there seated right now, but is also great. And that's, of course, Dustin in the middle, who is the main performer who's putting on all of these shows. In any case, I encourage everyone, please check out Cafe Wha. They didn't have anything specifically gluten-free to eat, but I was able to get some fries and a appetizer, which was listed as gluten, or they told me didn't have any gluten in it, and I didn't get sick. So I encourage everyone to just speak to people there. Everyone there was super nice. All of the bartenders were super nice. It was, bought a ticket to the show and then also had a 2-item minimum. And unlike some other places around, it was a 2-item minimum, not a 2-drink minimum, because a couple other places you go in town, they make you get 2 drinks instead of 2 items. And so food doesn't count. Here, food counted. You could just get fries and an appetizer, and that was counted as the 2 things that you had to get. So this was the closing performance, like a Rolling Stone, and it was great. So I encourage everyone to check it out. And I'm going to move on into the tier list, and just Cafe Wha was spectacular. Please check it out. Check out Dustin. Check out Evangeline. Check out Beatrice, Antonio, Steve, the whole gang. And let's move on into the tier list. And so here we have it. The tier listing of Bob Dylan's albums of the 60s. So I'm going to try to not make this video be incredibly long. So we'll go pretty quickly along here and just give my brief thoughts about each of these albums and why I'm putting them into each of these tiers. So first things first, let me tell you the tiers that I've created for the Bob Dylan album tier listing. First, for the F tier, we have Positively 4th Street. For the D... Now, just to throw this out here, this is not to say that I think that the song involved in any of these rankings is bad. I just thought that, it fit the category to put the song in that category. For the D tier, Desolation Row. C tier, It Ain't Me Babe. B tier, Mozambique. A tier, Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat. And S tier, Blind Willie McTail. So, first album is, of course, Bob Dylan, Bob's self-titled debut album from 1962. And I'm just going to pop it right into the C tier. I know that Dustin got some grief for putting it in about the C tier when he did this. However, that's about where this album goes. The songs, I mean, for a debut album, it is really good. And Sonda Woody and Talking New York are great songs. And it's just, in comparison to the rest of Dylan's stuff, it's a C tier album. I mean, anybody who says otherwise is just fooling themselves. So next we have, of course, Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, May of '63. Of course, it has some of the greatest songs of all time on it. Masters of War, Blow It in the Wind, Hard Rain's Gonna Fall, Girl from the North Country. These are great songs. This is a great album. Oops, it's certainly not going to go in the D tier. It could go in the S tier. It's clearly an S tier album from any other artist. Anybody other than Bob Dylan, this is their S tier album, their one S tier album. It's an A tier album from Bob Dylan. The Times They Are A-Changin' is a B tier album for me. When the Ship comes in, The Lonesome Death of Patty Carroll, The Times They Are A-Changin'. There's great songs on it. Only a Pawn in Their Game. It's a great album. I don't think it's as great as Freewheelin', and the vibe of it isn't the vibe that I like. I like the more fun vibe, the more exciting, the more experimental vibe that Bob gets later. And I almost want to put Another Side in S tier. It is one of my favorite albums. I'm putting it in A tier. My Back Pages is one of my favorite Dylan songs. There's a lot of really great stuff on Another Side, and of course it starts bringing back in. It's Another Side, right? It's the opposite of a Times They Are Changing feeling. And when you go through the discography, it has that. You really start to feel that that's when the things that are about to come are coming. Clearly, this is in the wrong place. I'm going to move it over here. So Bringing It All Back Home is my favorite 60s Dylan album. I know that that's a little bit of a controversial statement. I love every second of this album, from when you drop the needle on Subterranean Homesick Blues all the way through the very last notes of It's All Over Now, Baby Blue. Like, it's just, there's not a wrong note for me. And it mixes the electric sound and the acoustic sound, which I still enjoy. And it has the perfect album cover. And it has just so many great songs. Maggie's Farm, Love Minus Zero No Limit, Gates of Eden. There's so much great stuff on this album. And I clearly Highway 61 is a fantastic album. One on One is a fantastic album. It's not my favorite, but it's a fantastic album. But Bring It All Back Home is my favorite Dylan 60s album, so it's got to go in S tier for me. Highway 61, having said all that, is also an S tier album. There's no denying that. It is one of the best albums of all time, and there's not really anything that needs to be said about it. As is Blonde on Blonde. Blonde on Blonde is not my favorite, though. The reason that it's not my favorite is I don't get into the sound as much. I love the sound that Dylan and the Hawks are making live in '66. The sound that's on the album I'm not as into it. There's just something that doesn't draw me in quite as much. Maybe it's that it's a little bit more laid back. I don't know. It's a great album. Of course, it's one of the most influential albums of all time. It's perfect in some ways with the way that it has the feel to it, and the cover is, of course, so iconic. Double album. In any case, Blonde on Blonde, clearly S tier. John Wesley Harding, A tier for me. we're just in a stretch here where you got to go where you got to go. I love the sound of John Wesley Harding. I love how all of the songs kind of fit together and they have that interconnected vibe to them. And it again has some of my favorite Dylan songs on it. I Dreamed I Saw St. Augustine, All Along the Watchtower. There's so many great things on it. I am trying to go relatively quickly, so I'm speeding through some things that I want to talk about more, but I'm speeding through. So if you want to talk more, talk in the comments. I'll come talk to you. If you want me to like slow down and make some like individualized videos about this, I will. It's just not what the channel's supposed to be about. So I'm trying to make this something that I'm indulgent about, a little less indulgent than it would be otherwise. Nashville Skyline, I'm going to put down here in B tier with Times They Are Changing. Again, I like it. I think it's a good album. Its vibe is not my favorite vibe. So I think it's got some interesting songs. It's got Girl from the North Country, I Threw It All Away, Peggy Day, Country Pie. I mean, there's some interesting stuff on it. But again, it's just the entire vibe is not the vibe that I gel with as much. So clearly it's not one that I'm going to have to put in one of the top level. And that's it for our tier listing of Dylan's 60s albums and our visit to Cafe Wha. Keep coming back to Venue Diagram for more fun and exciting stuff. Until next time, we'll see you then.